Both Adam and Sangthong have plenty of experience in the desert. For more than 7 years, we've lived in eastern Saudi Arabia, where the climate is incredibly dry, drier than nearly anywhere in the United States. Maybe Death Valley is comparable to Saudi Arabia, but in general, the deserts over there in North America are not nearly as harsh as that which we live in here in Saudi Arabia. So, when we set out to the Grand Canyon from Sholo, we expected some hiking, nothing really too difficult. Maybe I didn't take into consideration the elevation. It really is a wonderful landscape there with, I believe those are aspen trees. And as we rolled up to the South Rim entrance, we saw some cars stopped around looking at these wildlife, these caribou, I believe. I'm not much of a biologist. I believe those are caribou. And instead of going to do our hiking, we just got something to eat and went to sleep that night since we got a kind of late start coming out of Sholo. The next morning we woke up and took a sunrise walk out to the South Rim,
husband and wife or girlfriend.
looking at the wildlife.
Hey. Hi.
And it was a cold
Good
walk.
morning.
My fingers
Beautiful.
were numb. They were white. I couldn't, by the time we got back, I couldn't even feel my fingers.
Ooh, it's cold.
It was cold.
Go.
Colder than anything we'd seen in Saudi Arabia. But we caught a nice sunrise. Went back, warmed up with Mom and Dad, and then went from our South Rim campground over to Desert View. And took a little day hike where we saw some more caribou, doing what caribou do. Got up and close and personal and took some photos with Sangthong's mom and dad again.
Beautiful.
Hiked around the top and then got down into the canyon a bit.
I can catch up on top.
The Grand Canyon is incredibly photogenic. The national park system, this was the first national park we stayed at. The national park system is very photogenic. It's just about impossible to take a bad photo. So we weren't sure exactly how far we'd go down into the canyon this day.
We are hiking at Grand Canyon.
So we just walked until we felt like, well, it's time to turn around. We didn't bring any water that day.
We're never gonna be here.
Try to video.
We saw some mules coming up the trail.
Hi. Hello.
These were pack mules, probably carrying garbage out of and food to the hotel down at the bottom there.
Well, that was terrifying. I'm like, if it kicks in, I'm going over the cliff.
But setting out on our little day trip again, we didn't bring any water, and so we were unprepared to take much of a journey out. So we just enjoyed the nature, the scenery, the wildlife, little plants and trees and things that were available to see on the trail. Found a nice squirrel at a water checkpoint, took a whole bunch of photos. We drove 9,000 miles and took more than 9,000 photos in our journey here. Happy every step of the way to be able to do something that not many people have the time or energy or resources to do. Really, really grateful once again. The constant theme of our trip is just looking at the nature and feeling gracious and happy and blessed to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So we got to the ooh-ah point in that giant boulder, and then we had to turn around. Because coming up, well, I suppose I had a little water you can see there. All right, so that was all the water we had. Coming back up is the hard part. Going down is the easier part. The canyon really was packed with tourists.
Bye.
In fact, the North Rim was booked solid. I couldn't get any campsites booked solid for months in advance. I started booking campsites more than a month advance, and the North Rim was completely full, maybe through the entire season. Some of the national parks were full until the next season, until 2022. And so we took our little day hike there on day 2 of our Grand Canyon stop. Didn't really have any problems. You know, it's dry. It wasn't very hot. Of course, it gets hotter going down into the canyon, but not too bad. Nothing that we hadn't experienced running across the desert in Bahrain, or if it's 107 degrees, we'll run miles in Saudi Arabia, no problem. So, take our photo, take our obligatory selfies, have ourselves a wonderful recreational tour, get back to the campground where Nook set up some gourmet food, which I'll get into later again, have dinner with Mom and Dad, and then went out to the desert tower to enjoy the sunset.
Beautiful.
Apparently some 80% or most people never get below the rim there. So we had already done more than most people will do. This giant hole in the ground.
Okay, no worries, it's fine.
We could spend our entire lives basically and never see the entire thing.
Smiling, smiling, smiley face.
So again, taking Mom and Dad around, life-size photo like that, it's a constant reminder that
ลูกเคยพามาเที่ยวลูกเคยพามาดูพระอาทิตย์
she
พระอา
says
ทิตย์ตกดิน
son-in-law is taking Mom and Dad around to see the sunset.
พาอะไรนะพ่อกับแม่
So it was cute and funny, and I had a hearty laugh at that. But it was a constant reminder that we are really lucky, even though I say teachers have limited resources, which they do. We were very lucky. So we went to sleep, got up the next day, and Nook made a little breakfast, and we were heading out to the Bright Angel Trail. Now, this is the day before my 43rd birthday. And when I was 16 and my mom was 43, we hiked down to the bottom and back. And we saw those signs, like the one just a moment ago where this man with a red back is vomiting on the trail, and the warnings that say that it's not recommended to hike down to the bottom to the Colorado River and back because of the 5,000-foot elevation change. It's a long distance as well as a lot of elevation. But I just saw, well, I did it at 16, my mom did it at 43, and so we can do it again.
Hello.
We're fit.
Beautiful. Good. Nice. Very challenging. Hi. Hello.
This is the other type of mule train with passengers.
Hello. It was fun. Hi. You should ride the horse too.
And so I had a backpack full of water. My mom and I hiked down to the river and back with very little water. In fact, we had to fill up from the river, and then somebody gave us iodine tabs. But Nook and I had plenty of water, right? And there's water stops along the way. So we enjoyed, the rocks and the scenery and the plants and the animals that the river feeds into. And, of course, trying to preserve that natural environment also until we got to the river. We got there. We did our little stretches and our pose for the camera. And not too long after that, well, it was time to get back up the trail. And this is where things started to get a little more difficult. Uphill is definitely harder than downhill. That craggly terrain and these many different parts of the canyon offered very little shade. But slowly but surely, we, step after step, made our way up, stopping at water stations along the way to fill up and rest.
Tiny.
But it is a very long way. It's a long way up, and it's a long way out. It's a long way across,
Amazing.
and it was pretty hot. And despite our training in the Saudi desert and our experiences prior to our trip to the Grand Canyon, Nook started to feel a little bit nauseous and lightheaded as we ascended. I didn't even think about it. She's so fit. We run half marathons and other assorted races, again, in 100-degree heat, 110-degree heat. She's from Thailand. Sweating is really just a fact of life for us. I took it for granted that we were both totally in shape and that nothing would cause us a problem. But as we ascended, that 5,000 feet, I think, really started to play with Nook, and then she had to slow down. And by the time we got around here, I was breathing heavily, still enjoying the views, and sure enough, I was tired, but whatever combination of factors, be it sitting in the car so many hours for so many days straight, or whatever, that guy showed up again, and that's what Nook looked like there, vomiting on the trail. Probably a little bit of heat stroke. And so we slowed it down. I was thinking, am I going to have to carry my wife out of here? But we made it back up to the trailhead, take our obligatory photos, get back in the car, and it was sundown by the time we got to the next resting spot over there at Desert View. So that's something we won't soon forget. The next day, Adam turns 43. It's a long drive out to Bakersfield and Kings Canyon.